Hey, what up, everybody? What's going on? It's me, your host. It's your boy, Junior Mwange. Welcome, man. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week and you guys are enjoying one of my favorite months of the year. It's the Black History Month, all right? So let me know you're here in the chat. Just say, we here. Let us acknowledge and let us celebrate each other. But anyways, look, man, we got a lot of good stuff coming on today. You know, when we started Let's Talk Money, the whole spirit behind this was to make sure that we were giving our people the information and the details so that they're ready to succeed and they're ready to win with money like they've never won before. And we started the month hard, y'all. Last month, we had my boy Varney Jala come in and talk about how to get your credit right? And the importance of credit, like how critical it is, and not just to borrow money, but for us to move the way we need to move and to be successful the way we need to be successful. And so every month, I promise y'all, we're going to keep bringing the heat. We're going to keep bringing the heat every single month. This is going to be a high-valued Facebook community group. This ain't going to be one of those dead groups to join. Game-changing material is going to be popping right here in this group. And so when we were thinking and planning out for February, we wanted to make sure that we was going to do February right. Like, we needed to do February justice. Like, we wanted to make sure that we didn't just reflect on the history of Black people, but more importantly, we could speak to the economics of Black people and how it's important for us today. And so we had to go in our bag and make sure that we were going to get the right person to deliver the right message for y'all. And look, man, I connected with this dude about a year ago. The brother's a bright man, Professor Julian Waddell. And he is a content expert when it comes to understanding not just Greenwood District and Black Wall Street, man, but the brother knows how we could apply some of the learnings that we got from back then to be relevant and effective today. All right. And let me be clear to everybody, man. Like, there's this saying that you can never know where you're going unless you know where you came from. You never know where you're going unless you know where you came from. And so, look, we wanted to pull back from the Black Wall Street, which you guys all know so well, and figure out how we can learn. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to have my brother come up on here in a moment, and he's going to give us a presentation. I want you guys to tap in, lock in, ask questions. And afterwards, we're just going to vibe and ask some Q&As, man. So, again, y'all, appreciate y'all for being here on this Thursday night for Let's Talk Money. Without further ado, I welcome a brother, an author, a brilliant mind, and Professor Julian Waddell. All right, I'm going to see you in a bit.
We're all familiar with Rosa Parks' refusal on the bus that day. The music, artistry, and soul from the Renaissance in Harlem. And who could forget Martin Luther King's eloquent and vivid dream on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial? But why don't you know about Greenwood? The district of Tulsa, named after a city in Mississippi. The district better known as Black Wall Street. Yes, the place where the massacre happened. But did you know the people who live there are more than what happened to them? If you can't answer that question, then you owe it to yourself to read Tales from the Greenwood District by Julian Waddell. Exploring the history that created the legacy, highlighting the lives lived rather than how those lives were lost. Get your copy on Amazon today. For more information, visit talesfromthegreenwooddistrict.com.
I am so excited to talk to you all today. Now, as was mentioned, my name is Julian Waddell. And before I introduce myself, I want to tell you something. I've been told that I'm a little long-winded. So what I'm going to do is going to be a little different. I want some interactivity so you can keep me from just going on a tangent or anything like that. And the reason why that's important is because I love talking about history, entrepreneurship, and storytelling. And I can sometimes find myself continuing on this path once I get into a specific stride. So as I talk, I'm going to give you a little cues for you to be able to come back and make sure that we make this a conversation. So before we get started, I have a question for you. All right. So the question is, there was a series of outbreaks of labor and race-related violence. And between 39 and 150 African Americans were killed. This was in late May, July 1917. During that time frame, 6,000 Black people were left homeless, and I would say the property damage cost around $400,000 back then. I would say $8,080,000 in today's dollars. Can anyone in the chat tell me where that took place? I'm gonna wait a moment. I'm looking in the chat to see what it said. Tell me where that took place. Now, if you think or thought that Oklahoma was the answer, or if you're thinking Tulsa is the answer, I would have to tell you, unfortunately, that's incorrect. It's actually East St. Louis, Illinois. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning that to you right now is because it's important to show that massacres like this did not just take place in Tulsa. That wasn't just a one-off thing. It happened in Illinois, it happened in Oklahoma, it happened in Florida. This was something that was a common occurrence during that time frame. Now, I am mentioning that to you, but it's very important to note that this conversation that we're having is not going to be about the massacre. So, let me pull up my slides for you real quick. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So one of the first things that we're going to do is when we're talking about Black Wall Street specifically, what I want you to do, if you notice in this title, you see Black Wall Street crossed out. The reason why I do that in this, because I want you to focus on the Greenwood district. Now, the question can be asked, why am I calling it the Greenwood district? And if you aren't familiar with the background of it, it's because that's what it was named. And Black Wall Street is what it was called when Booker T. Washington came to visit. And he saw all the things, all the good things that was happening in the community. And he decided, man, this is the Black Wall Street. But I want every time I say Black Wall Street, I want you all to correct me and say the Greenwood district. Now, has anybody ever watched The Office? My wife introduced me to that show. She loved that show, and I grew to love it. It was with Steve Carell, and it was something that across the world, people loved The Office. Now, the Office isn't on anymore, but of course, whenever somebody wants to go watch it and so on and so forth, everybody knows from different scenes, they always have some type of callback to The Office because of its cultural importance. Now, recently, this show came out called Abbott Elementary. And I was online and I noticed that when people were discussing Abbott Elementary and they were trying to describe Abbott Elementary, they decided to call it the Black Office. And of course, by calling it the Black Office, people who love The Office said, oh man, I have to watch it because if it's like The Office, it must be good. And that does not make it a bad thing. It just minimizes the actual accomplishments that Abbott Elementary is. And so that's the same concept that I'm trying to say when I talk about the Greenwood district. There's nothing wrong with calling it Black Wall Street, obviously, but just like I said it before, by just referring to it only as Black Wall Street, you're not acknowledging what the inhabitants called it. You're minimizing the actual accomplishments and it equates it to just a copy. So every time I say Black Wall Street, what I want you to type in, and I'm going to say it throughout my whole presentation, I want you to type into the comments the Greenwood district. Good with that? Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. We broke down, we had questions. I let you know exactly how we're going to go forward from here. But let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I even wrote the book to begin with. So I'm going to play a video for you all so y'all can have a little bit of a background.
Reading Rainbow is launching its Young Writers and Illustrators Awards contest, and once again, we want you to share your adventures with us. This contest is for kids from kindergarten through 3rd grade. We're giving you the opportunity to create your own book and win some great prizes, like a home computer and a printer. So enter Reading Rainbow's Young Writers and Illustrators Awards contest today. I'm looking forward to reading your story soon.
Okay, so a little backstory. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with LeVar Burton. And the reason why is during that time frame, I saw him in 3 different shows. It was on the Roots miniseries by Alex Haley. It was on TV. Of course, during that time frame, this was like Roots was something that was played over and over again. And my parents allowed me to watch Roots to basically look into history. And I fell in love with learning history of Alex Haley as he broke down where he came from. Then I would see LeVar Burton in Reading Rainbow, and he's telling me the importance of reading. And from there, I would then go and I would watch Star Trek. Now, the importance of seeing this one singular character across the board in these 3 different settings, as an enslaved person, as an educator, and as somebody that is going where no man has gone before, for a child, it got me to a point where I knew that I wanted to be just like that. Because what that said is, it didn't matter where I came from. The sky was not the limit. And so LeVar Burton represented that across all 3 shows, and that made me want to be who I am right now. So with that being said, my name is Julian Waddell. As it was mentioned before, I'm a professor at Oakwood University. I'm also the executive director of the Entrepreneurship Center here, and I am passionate about entrepreneurship, but more important than that, I am passionate about ecosystem building. And that's what this conversation is going to be about, ecosystem building. So in order for us to really dive into ecosystem building, I want to talk about the historical context of how something like Black Wall Street came about. To start, we have to go all the way back and define entrepreneurship. So if you look at the screen, entrepreneurship is the activity of setting up a business using resources, investments such as capital and labor to profit from it. That's how it's defined, right? What you have to understand is that when you think about entrepreneurship and you think about where we came from within America, you have to look at entrepreneurship for the enslaved person. So we're going to go all the way back to the time of slavery. This is pre-Civil War, okay? In this time frame, would you know that we as African Americans, although we were enslaved, we participated in entrepreneurship. And in order for us to completely participate in entrepreneurship, we had to have pillars that allowed us to be able to do that. But I know you're probably thinking, how were we able to participate in entrepreneurship when at that time, unfortunately, we were considered property? So in order for that to happen, in some areas, the environment had to be set up where we were able to use skills that we brought with us before we were enslaved and use those skills to be able to build industries such as being an artisan in general, being able to do specific things to build materials and products that other people would be able to benefit from. So when an ideal situation presented itself, it allowed for this enslaved individual to then go forward and sell that product and or service so that they could then go and take that money, save, and be able to try to not only buy their freedom or buy the freedom of their loved ones. In order for that to be able to truly flourish, we had to build pillars. And of those pillars, you'll see the church, schools, I think it was the Mason lodges, and we had little areas where we had conventions and we had the media and the press. All those different things came afterwards, and that's how we were able to continue to establish that entrepreneurship ecosystem. During that time frame, as I mentioned, with the roots of slavery, all those skills that we were able to do, it was in our nature to be able to not only use these skills to be able to act entrepreneurially when we were able to, but to be able to train our friends, the people that were near us, the other people that were enslaved with us, to be able to learn those skills so that we could also be able to build upon that. That in and of itself was being able to create a form of ecosystem. Now, you're going to hear me say ecosystem a lot. And the reason why that's important is because it grows past just the idea of entrepreneurship. One of the things that you're going to see as I continue to talk is that in order to rebuild the idea of Black Wall Street, is you can't think of it from the standpoint of just being an entrepreneur. You have to see yourself as an ecosystem builder. So let's talk about these pillars that I was talking about. Now, I mentioned before that I work at Oakwood University as a professor. Oakwood University is an HBCU. HBCU means it's an historically Black college and or university, right? Did you know that the way HBCUs were created, they were created for multiple reasons, but one in particular that stands out is to develop entrepreneurs. Now, they weren't called entrepreneurs, but you have to think about it like this. You are a recently freed individual. When you went to these training areas, these colleges, you weren't being trained, you weren't being educated to go work for someone else. Why? Because those opportunities to work for someone else were not available for people of our skin color. What we had to do was figure out, with those skills that we used when we were enslaved, those skills that we used to help make our lives a little bit better for our loved ones, we had to use those skills and learn more skills to be able to grow from that point and grow and build an ecosystem so that we could then thrive. Now, I mentioned before there were a lot of obstacles in our path, and those obstacles that continue to happen are those obstacles that I'm referring to when we were unable to find or have employment because of race relations. And so entrepreneurship is something that you would see that stayed consistent over every generation. And what that showed is that we were always, regardless of the obstacles that came in our place, ready to survive. So I'm going to tell you about a person that wanted to do more than survive. His name was E.P. McCabe. Now, E.P. McCabe, he had an idea of that, okay, we need to create a Black state. Now, the reason why he was saying that is because he was tired of all of these instances where people like him were being held back because of their skin color. So he said, okay, during Reconstruction, we were supposed to get our 40 acres and a mule. Things were supposed to be different. We were now free. So what can we do from here? If we were to create a Black state, we can then be able to have the representation, because during the time frame right after, which is during Reconstruction, we had representation. We had people who went to the Senate. We had people who were presidential appointees that were Black. And during that time frame, he felt specifically that if we had a black state, we could then go and we could transition from survival mode to thriving mode. But you know what? That's just my word. You don't have to take my word for it. Let me play you a video that tells you more details from a scholar that knows a lot more about E.P. McCabe.
E.P. McCabe, a prominent man in his own right. He had been the state auditor in Kansas, highest elected black official in Kansas, elected in 1882 and 1884. Native New Yorker, saw the opportunity to come to Oklahoma and really had ambitions of having a portion of the Oklahoma Territory carved out as an all-black state. He met with the United States President Benjamin Harrison in 1890. They talked about it. It was considered very seriously. Articles were written about the prospect of an all-black state in newspapers as varied as the New York Times and the Daily Oklahoman. And so there's a lot of commentary and a lot of discussion about this prospect of creating an all-black state. Ultimately, it failed. But in the process, a number of African Americans came from primarily the southeastern United States, escaping the oppression of the Deep South. Well, I think a number of things led to the failure of the black state idea. One was simply racism. There was a big fear about allowing, a large enclave of black folks to be gathered in one place. So these towns proliferated. Some of them were very successful, like Boley. Boley had the nation's first black-owned bank, first black-owned telephone company, first federally chartered black bank, very entrepreneurial community. But a lot of these communities were devastated in the recession and the depression of the late 20s and early 30s, just like many of the small rural white communities were devastated at the same time. About a dozen of those communities still remain in Oklahoma, but they're by and large struggling.
Okay. So the reason why I wanted to show you that, so you can have a little background and historical background on the idea of why we were coming to Oklahoma in the first place, why Oklahoma was so important, and how Tulsa came about to be what it became, which was Black Wall Street. It all started because E.P. McCabe had the idea that if we came to Oklahoma, we can make Oklahoma a black state. Now, the reason why that was also important is you have to note that during that time frame, there were more African Americans in Oklahoma at one point than white Americans. And so it seemed like this was the place, and it was all pitched to be the promised land. And so I need to tell you, I mentioned Greenwood before, and I have to tell you why Greenwood was important. Now, Greenwood was important specifically because there was a place in Greenwood, Mississippi, right after the Civil War during Reconstruction. Greenwood, Mississippi was structured to be super beneficial for Black people because no longer were these enslaved men and women having to pick cotton during that place because it was known for cotton. They could then start their own business and be extremely successful there. But because Reconstruction was short-lived, all of the strides that were made were taken back. And so they realized that they weren't going to get what was promised to them. And so they went from there, and they were always looking on what can I do to relocate. So some people had a mass migration to Chicago and all, like the Midwest. But what they were hearing across the board, across the United States, was we need to go to Oklahoma. So in comes O.W. Gurley. O.W. Gurley was from Huntsville, Alabama. And he was also a presidential appointee during Reconstruction, working a part of the Postal Service. And he left that job during Reconstruction and decided to relocate to Oklahoma during the land rushes. But to make a long story short, he is the founder from Huntsville, Alabama. He is one of the founders of Black Wall Street. Now, the other person, his name was John the Baptist Stratford. Now, in both cases, I don't want to go into too much detail because, of course, like I said in the very beginning, I have the habit of I can go and go and go and talk about this all day. But here's the thing about both of these people. They weren't thinking, everyone that came there, they weren't thinking along the line of, I need to do this for me. I needed to do this for myself. It wasn't about survival at this point. It was, how can we build something to thrive? So O.W. Gurley and John the Baptist Stratford said, you know what? Right now, we are in this area, and we know that even though we have access and there are individuals that are becoming millionaires because Oklahoma at that time produced 25% of the oil in the United States, they knew that there would be people that would be pushing back and saying, you know what? It's like, we have to throw obstacles in your way and stop you. So this is what they did. They started focusing on how can we create supplemental industries that supported people that came here. So instead of saying, you know what, let's fight over this oil, they said, you know what, people are going to come fight over this oil. So everybody that is coming to Tulsa is instead creating an ecosystem, an infrastructure that supported every one of the industries that needed to focus on getting oil. So you would see grocery stores, you would see hotels, you would see doctor's offices, you would see all of these different industries pop up to provide support to the individuals that were coming after the oil rush. Now think along the same line of the California gold rush. When people went after for gold in California, everybody just, the main people, when they thought about it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I'm going to hit gold and I'm going to get rich from that. But you know what really succeeded? It was the individuals that made the jeans, like the Levi jeans, the individuals that sold the pickaxes. Yes, you can go after the gold, but the mindset behind it was, let me build the ecosystems that supported going after the gold. And that's what these two gentlemen did. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the legacy of this place, okay? Now, as they built this, it flourished so much to the point that people far and wide, it didn't matter what race they were, they came there and they were benefiting from that environment. They were benefiting from that even during the Spanish flu. Now, keep this in mind. The Spanish flu, just like the pandemic that we're going through right now, it affected economies across the board. But do you know, during that time frame of the Spanish flu, who was still thriving? Black Wall Street. Now, I told you before that I wasn't going to really go into the massacre because that's not what this conversation is about. What I will say is I'm going to talk about briefly the losses that happened from everything that happened. Now, when the massacre took place, which is June 1st, 1921, at least 300 people lost their lives. And if you were to calculate it, scholars say that when you look at the damage in today's money, they lost between $50 to $100 million. Now, of course, in building this out, you would think that, of course, there's insurance, right? But if you notice, if you were to look it up, you would see that there is, like, you would see some instances call it the Tulsa massacre, and then you will see some instances call it the Tulsa riot. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning that to you specifically is that during that time frame, when you got insurance, there was a clause that said that they meaning the insurance companies, were not going to pay for any damages if it was considered a riot. So by calling it a riot, all of these businesses, all of these thousands of businesses, all of these thousands of homes, they were unable to get any type of recovery to this day because it was considered a riot. Now, it was obvious, and you can look at the Tulsa Commission and you can do your research here. Like I said, I am not going to go into the detail of what happened because that's not what this conversation is about. But you can see that by calling it a riot, it caused a whole ecosystem to shatter. Now, just because it shattered, it did not mean that they were unable to bounce back. Because see, the thing is that I want to show you all is that across the board, just like I mentioned back in slavery, just like I mentioned right after slavery, just like all the way through, we had to be able to switch between survival mode and thriving mode. Whenever you think about Black Wall Street, you have to think about from the mindset of, I have to think of thriving mode and I have to think about me, meaning you, as an ecosystem builder. But when I'm unable to think about myself as an ecosystem builder, I have been able to survive through all of these adversities. So here are some examples. If you look at the screen, you can see that over time, we've owned across, and this is our current state, right? We own in different states 124,551 businesses. This is our makeup. This is what we make up in the United States. And so this is from a study from 2019, I believe, is where I pulled this from. And it was saying that just in DC alone, Black-owned businesses accounted for 28 businesses. And when you think along the line of in New York, our businesses made up over 200,000 businesses. And from an employment standpoint, our annual payroll, and this is from 2019, it was $23.9 billion. So that in and of itself shows that even throughout adversity, or and this is the adversity that we've gone through. What it included was lack of financial opportunities, laws and regulations that may have prevented us from getting some of the same opportunities. Even with all those different things happen, we've been able to still flourish. And it even rose even further during the pandemic. During the pandemic, it showed that a lot of our businesses were able to grow despite the pandemic happening. I want to leave you with this particular thing. I've been mentioning ecosystem building for a reason. And it's like, in order to think about us as ecosystem builders, you have to ask yourself this question. These questions: who told you that we don't stick together? Who told you that we don't support our own? Who told you that we are consumers and not creators? As we transition from survival mode and we think with a thriving mentality, a growth mentality, we have to think along the line that what we can do to rebuild Black Wall Street is that we have to see each and every one of us as an ecosystem builder. If we see each and every one of us as an ecosystem builder, not just an entrepreneur, that means that we are creating the systems, the communities that's in place that have always been there all the way through our history, and we can easily rebuild Black Wall Street. I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me ramble on about things that I love, such as Black Wall Street, history, entrepreneurship. And I am telling you that if you think along the line of an ecosystem builder, not just an entrepreneur, your mindset switches to thrive mode. Thank you.
Dude, man, that was yo, brother, that was powerful, man. That was powerful. I was here taking notes, man, just trying to kind of unpack. And there's so many ways, man. I just want to kind of go with this, man. I think, and then you kind of hinted toward this, man, but just out of curiosity, like, what made you lean in really on unpacking and studying the Greenwood district as it pertains to the state of Black wealth? Like, what really helped you? Like, what burnt in you that says, hey, look, like, we gotta figure this thing out? Would love to hear that from your point of view.
Okay. So in regards to Black wealth, and it's funny, it's like I was talking today. So I went to the barbershop today. In preparation for the show. I wanted to make sure that, you know, it was a little fresh for the show. And I went there, and it was a thought that I had before this book, and it's a thought that I had today. I looked in there and I saw a whole ecosystem running.
Yeah.
When I came in there, someone asked me, I'm trying to wash cars. That's what the person said. Do you mind if I wash your car? I'm gonna detail it and everything. They washed my car. I'm in there getting my hair cut. At the same time, someone over there is setting up a flyer. The flyers for an event. Another person is actually passing out their CD for their mixtape. And in and of itself, you saw within that one space a complete ecosystem that was being supported just because that was there. And so when I thought about that, and I thought about the idea that when the Greenwood district was created and the systems that were in place, it wasn't about, I am just going to build this one thing for me to benefit.
Yeah.
Even when you're thinking about you with this show right here, Let's Talk Money, it's like, this is not just for you. You're not doing this to like put money in your pocket. Everybody that's watching this right now is benefited from it. And you just having this conversation, you have created an ecosystem. Your ecosystem that you set up allows me to talk right now. I can mention my book, and the person behind the scenes to go and basically he can produce all this within this whole environment. This is the ecosystem. And so in order to fully see it, in order to fully thrive, you have to see all of everything that's happening as an ecosystem.
So, dude, I love what you're saying, man. I could talk to you all day. Look, here's the reality, though, man. I think, and by the way, guys, if you have questions, please load up them in the chat. I want to make sure while we got Professor that, you know, that we ask all the questions we need to. But look, man, there's no secret about it. The black dollar stays in our community for a very short period of time. When you look at the Asian community, the Jewish community, 20 days, 30 days, months, and you look at Greenwood District, not Black Wall Street, the Greenwood District, you see it, up to 6 months at a time. How do we get to that place where we see each other as an ecosystem? Like, how do we I feel like, especially today, man, we're so not connected. It's such and I don't know if it's a capitalistic infrastructure, but we're so competitive that we can't benefit. Now, I'd love to kind of hear your point of view on how do we get to that mentality that you're talking about of an ecosystem builder?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that specifically. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to leave those 3 questions that I asked about who told you that we don't stick together, who told you that we don't support our own, and who told you that we are consumers and not creators. The reason why I mentioned that specifically in the last slide is because in order to see ourselves as ecosystem builders, we can't just see our business. A person can't just see their happening. Like, I'm gonna go into movie references. I love movies, but like, have you seen The Matrix?
Yeah.
All right. In The Matrix, it wasn't in the very first Matrix. It wasn't until Neo was able to see the code on the walls and all those different things that he could actually see that the environment that he was in is not a real environment. What I mean is, when you're looking past, I need to just do this for me. I just need to start this business for me specifically. And you're seeing how this business is impacting people. And I'm not just talking about one-to-one, you sit in my chair and I cut your hair. You're seeing the whole system of everybody that's benefiting because I have this place in this community. You then go from there and say, I see it. The moment that you see it, it changes your paradigm. You are no longer along the line of being this person that says, I'm just about me. You're seeing that I'm no longer thinking about, I built this. You're more so seeing we are benefiting from our synergy.
Mm.
And it's always there. It's like I want to say this one particular thing. Think about it. When you see a business, let's say for instance, it's like I'm gonna use your show for an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you say I'm going to start this show, it's like people that like really like are with you. They're going to like, okay, I'm going to watch this show because you're doing it. That's going to be like the first instance. It's like I need to think this just because I don't care what the show is about, but let me show you some love by showing up, right?
Yeah.
That mindset when you first start off by thinking about that's the kernel of support that's there. You don't start off by saying, I'm not going to do it. He's going to do it. I don't want that to happen. But if you start to see like, just because you say it, I'm going to do it. And that's something that you'll see within our community. Within our community, it's like, it's contrary to what a lot of people say happens, but you'll see that if we are thinking along the line of how can we support each other, we start off by thinking these are the things that we're going to do to support each other. So it starts from that. It starts from actually seeing it as we are supporting just because.
Yeah. Just because we Black. I like that. So I want to take a question from the chat. Someone says, how can we best influence, empower other African Americans to join or partake in solid ecosystems?
Okay. So in order to actually get in that, you have to basically look at what are the things that you're trying to solve. It's like you don't have to solve the world, but it's like I keep on going back to barbershop. I can say car wash. It was like, okay, I want to start a car wash. Thinking along the line of why I'm doing it and not just stopping at I'm doing this because I want to make money. Actually look at like this is all the things that are impacted by this. Because see, we naturally, when you're transitioning from a survival mode says I need money. I need money because I need to pay bills. I need to pay bills because I'm being held back and I can't get out of my situation. But if you're seeing all of the things that are being created from this one thing that I decided to do, and all these people are being supported by it and not thinking about I need to just do this because I need to come up, you start to see it differently. You're not seeing it from a vertical. It's like I need to grow here. I'm seeing it from a horizontal view, and I'm seeing all of the things that I'm touching. When you start to see all the things that you're touching, and it's just a passive thought. When you start to see all the things that you're touching, you're participating in building an ecosystem. If everyone thinks along that line, then you can see the type of change that can be impactful. All it takes is being able to see it.
Love it. All right, cool. We got another question from the chat. It says, as an ideator, how do we weed out your many ideas? Is it based on profit, passion, or both?
Okay, so one of the things that I do, I can tell you, I come up with maybe 6 or 7 ideas a day. It's like if you look at my name, you'll see Julian B, and next to it you see Idea Wingman. Now, in order to be able to think along the line of how do I weed out those ideas, it's not about the profit, neither is it about passion. What it actually is okay, with these ideas, what is it that I really want to do? Like I do have an idea, but I need to make a list of me. I need to make a list of these are the things that I am capable of doing. These are the resources that are available to me. This is what I can do by myself. And I need to look at that list and say, all right, with this list, am I able to solve or provide a solution to a problem that's associated with that idea?
Yeah.
And by thinking along that line, you're seeing what you're actually capable of doing. And then you can apply, okay, now I know how to make a profit off of this. And now I know, am I going to be passionate enough to continue doing this? I want to add one thing in association with that. I mentioned this on a regular basis, but it has a lot to do with finding solutions to problems. I was doing some research in regards to limited possibilities of making money. So the idea is when you see, if you can agree that there are an unlimited amount of problems, right? And the idea of making money is finding solutions for those problems. That means the capacity to make money is unlimited.
Yeah.
And so that when you're thinking about your ideas, you have to think about, how do I think about solving a problem? Because you know that the moment that you think about finding that problem, no matter what the problem is, you will find a limited amount of problems. You'll find a limited amount of ways to make money.
Yeah, love it, love it, love it, man. So let me ask you this, man. So I know you probably saw the report from CNBC where it shows that in 2021, the economic power of the Black person from a financial perspective, I think it came to, our spending power is 1.6 trillion. So we consume. What do you say to the people who are reluctant to buy Black because, i.e., they may think customer service is poor, products are inferior, institutions are not as good, right? They kind of adopt the white is right mentality, and this is no knock on white people, but what kind of counsel do you give to those who are reluctant to stay, or the costs are too high, or are reluctant to invest in their community?
I'm really glad you asked that question. And that's one of the things that I also wanted to mention when I was talking about intentionality, being intentional about what kind of choices and decisions you make. Because in order to be intentional, saying I'm going to provide support, that's just the first step, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other step is I want you to take it. I had to skip past it because I didn't want to take all day, but this is one of the things I had earlier in my slides. The idea is, it's not a Black business issue. It's actually a small business issue. So think along this line specifically. When it comes to, I'm going to say let's say black on black crime. I'll use that as the example, right? Mm-hmm. Black on black crime signifies that there isn't any other type of crime. Like, for instance, there is no such thing as white on white crime, or Asian on Asian crime, so on and so forth. But by basically placing it as a crime that is only specific to a specific community, it basically says that this one thing only happens here. So the same thing is applicable when you think about black businesses. Black on black crime signifies that, okay, this doesn't happen anywhere else, because they make it a point to call it that. But if you notice, if you were looking at the particular statistics, you would say that it's more likely that in this person, a white person will most likely kill somebody that's in his vicinity, another white person, or an Asian person. If they're in their community, it would be like that. So when you think along the line of business owners, when you think about the problems that are associated, it's not necessarily a bad Black businesses. It's more so small businesses that are unable to get specific financial insertions into their companies. Like, a lot of the times you'll see things like, we are unable to get additional financial incentives, such as like going to get a bank loan or so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so we end up having to work a little bit harder, which means that we have to charge a little bit more. And this is a small business problem, because you're competing against bigger corporations like Walmart or Target or some other people that has the influx of money. And that issue becomes more so like, man, why is this business not flourishing, when in actuality, as a small business, I don't have the resources to be able to compete. And I know that's the case because when you think about, let's say, a Walmart, if a Walmart comes into a rural city, and you have all these mom and pop shops in that rural city, and I can go to a 24-hour Walmart, because at this mom and pop shop, they close at 7 because they're trying to put food on their table. They have to live, they have to survive. This huge corporation over here is now taking those jobs. But what you end up seeing or hearing is, no, this is a solo Black issue. No, it's a small business issue.
That's a word, man. That's a word. I never thought of it like that. Good stuff, bro. I want to take another question from the crowd. It says, how do we maximize financial opportunity and scale within the African American ecosystems when most individuals, specifically Black people, feel as though they don't have or make sufficient disposable income. Kind of like that survival mentality you was talking about.
Okay. Hey, if you don't mind, can you put the question back up so I can like look it over real quick? Okay. All right. So here's the thing, and this is why it's all about scale at that point. It's like, of course, if it was an easy thing, of course everyone would do it. So it's not one of those things that I'm just going to believe and now everything is just going to work out. But this is something that's like specifically interesting for us, and this is the reason why I made it a point to talk about our background. Like every time, I equate it the same way. I'm gonna use a Bible reference here. So in the Bible, it talks about like the Israelites and how the Israelites, even though the straw was taken away from them, they were able to still make bricks. Even though Egypt, Pharaoh was taking that away, they were still able to do it. Now that same concept, that's something that we have in spades within the Black community. So when you think about it, every single time, it's like that was a point. The reason why I was mentioning how even though we were considered property, we were still entrepreneurs while we were enslaved, because what we brought from Africa over here, these skills that we brought over, we were still using those skill sets regardless of our situation to be able to make whatever we needed to make happen, to be able to buy our freedom if necessary, buy the freedom of our family. So now let's apply that to now. We're not having sufficient disposable income. This is the reason why it's so important to start seeing the ecosystems that we're in. It's like when you're thinking and you're seeing the ecosystems, you're no longer saying like, man, my job, I want to make six figures. You're not solely looking at that. Six figures, money is a tool. And of course, it's a tool that's necessary, but that's only one tool. So the moment that you start seeing the ecosystem in its entirety, you're not looking at like, man, I don't have the resources to do it. How do I create or fertilize my environment that solves a problem that multiple people around me can benefit from? And once I'm thinking like that, I'm not thinking like it's not scaling because, okay, I need this milestone of money. That will come because of, like I said, the money is the tool part. It's basically saying, how can I build this system and strengthen it in such a way that it can't be blown away by outside forces? Once you apply that mentality to the development of whatever business that you have, and you're not thinking about how can I compete, but how can I cooperate with everybody within this ecosystem, we're all growing together and we're able to scale regardless of that money. And that's one of the things that you end up continuously seeing when you're supporting businesses in your community, when you're walking and marching with somebody else. When something negative happens, it's that community that we have made. That's the reason why I mentioned those 5 pillars, that when they were entrepreneurs as enslaved individuals, they decided to create those 5 pillars, which was the church, which was the media and the press, like organizations for us. It was the Masonic organizations, so on and so forth, the conventions, the schools. All of those were meant to act as a foundational piece. So anybody that utilized those foundations were able to then grow and then scale. That's why they were capable. The OW girlies out there, they didn't have the money to start off with, but they thought about how can I benefit the community?
I love it, man. Dude, look, guys, if there's anything I remember, the ecosystem, it's all about the ecosystem. This is bigger than just us. It's bigger than just our personal pockets. It's the same reason why Professor's doing what he's doing, the same reason why I'm doing what I'm doing to kind of get the word out there, is because we want to see our people win. Hey, Julian, do me a favor, man, because we got to wrap up on time. 2 things. 1, tell us about your book. And then 2, if you can, man, just, in a quick way, do you ever think we can get back to what we were? Or can we be like, can we really see a space where, and I'm not talking about a few Black elite, I'm talking about collectively communities of Black people thriving. Do you see a space where we can get there?
Yes. So I'm gonna start off by telling you about my book, because I was like, I don't want that to pass. All right, my book is called Tales from the Greenwood District. You can find that anywhere where books are sold. But if you go right now,
we'll post the link too.
Like the website is talesfromthegreenwooddistrict.com. You can go and get this, but for this week, like ending tomorrow, you can get this book, the ebook, for free because you're watching this show. Awesome. So if you watch this show, you can go on and get the ebook. But if you want to buy the physical copy, go on Amazon or go Barnes & Noble's Books A Million. I have the paperback and the hardcover. Now, awesome. To answer your question specifically on, it's like not just the Black elite, is like it's one of those things of, and as like again, I don't want to come off as like like I'm a broken record with this ecosystem, talking specifically about the ecosystem. But in order to do that, is like we have to. It's like I look at. I think it was about a couple months ago. I went to Georgia, and when I went to Georgia, I saw Tyler Perry's studio, and I saw on his studio, I saw this huge lot, and that lot was like formerly a plantation, and it was acres and acres. I think it was over 200 acres. But when you see it, it was a magnificent view. He had an area where people took pictures. But the point of it was he was trying to create a space, even if that wasn't his goal. If the goal was just him, he was like he created a space where other people were able to utilize things around him, like so that people can film shows there. And I saw other shows that had nothing to do with Tyler Perry Studios being placed there. The idea, same thing with if you've heard of Robert F. Smith. Robert F. Smith recently, I think it was 2 days ago, he created this fund for people who were going to school, specifically for helping provide support for students, not just for their books, but for things that pop up that they're not prepared for in their academic journey. So that means that in order to create the ideal environment, you have to look at whatever you're building. No matter what you're building, you can't just have the mentality that I'm focusing on getting a financial bottom line. You have to have a social mission as well. That social mission is, how can I benefit the community? Now, of course, thrive, make money, so on and so forth. But everything that you build, now I'm not talking about you have to make a nonprofit. That's not what I'm saying. But it needs to have two bottom lines, a social bottom line and a financial bottom line. And by doing that, you automatically start creating that ecosystem, and we do that naturally.
Julian, you know what I've learned, man, is when you prioritize people and you think about people, the revenue will follow you. Like you start solving problems, people will find you. Like people invest in what they see value in, and they see value if you can solve some of their problems. Man, bro, look, man, this is not the last time you're going to see Julian on this platform. Brother, I'm praying for you, man. I love the ministry that you're doing. I love the fervor that you have. And your passion for our community, man. This is, I'm so glad we got you on this month in February, man. So I just want to say thank you so much for bringing the heat, not disappointing. I hyped this thing up all week, right? And so you delivered, bro. And I want to just say thank you, man, from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you for logging in today.
Thank you for having me.
Nah, you got it, man. You got it. Listen, everybody, this is wrapping up Let's Talk Money today. I really hope you guys had a good time. Look, guys, the mission is clear. We want to see our people win like they've never won before, like operating in purpose, operating and creating ecosystems where we could all build and get this thing. Yo, I'm going to give everything I got in my power to make sure that we're in a space to do this stuff. And it's people like Julian Waddell that inspires me and it keeps me going. Like, yo, look, we're in the same battlefield trying to see Black people win. And so, look, guys, I need you to stay tuned. Next month is going to be March Women's Month. We're going to talk about women and getting a bag, finances and women. Finances is not a man thing, y'all. It's a human thing. And so we're going to explore that. But for today, y'all enjoy your Black History Month. And for those who want the ebook, we're going to post the link to get the ebook to his book. Y'all need to read that stuff. It's on my to-do list. Read as well. Get up in that book. Start learning how we can build this Black Wall Street back or Greenwood district. And then on top of that, man, if you are in a space where you're trying to figure out how to win and learn how to get money together, I'm also encouraging you guys to sign up for Financial Legacy Academy. Put yourself in a position to win. This is the time we make the investments. Till then, I'm going to see y'all on March, the fourth week, that Thursday at 6 p.m. I'm going to holler at y'all. We out.
Before Financial Legacy Academy, we were secure in where we were. We were paying all our bills on time. But one thing that we weren't doing is setting aside things that we could use for later.
I was a straight consumer, period. Just used money to spend.
I was a spendthrift. I was like very materialistic, whether it was cars or jewelry or things of that nature.
This class gave us a clear strategy. Financial Legacy brought a certain amount of consistency to what we were doing. Now we were doing things intentionally.
With this class, we've totally invested our money in the right places. We've saved our money. We're more on a budget.
We're in a better financial place.
What we took from it was able to really sit down, come up with a plan together, and really allow ourselves to take our incomes together and grow them.
I think it's really important for the Black community to have a financial legacy because we've literally built America from the ground up. I would definitely recommend this class for anyone who wants to build wealth or wants to invest but doesn't know where to start.
We definitely recommend Financial Legacy.
Because not only is it going to change your current situation, but it's going to help to change the situation for all them children that you got coming in the future.